August 9th, 1993, southern Siberia, the Snezhnaya River. A group of kayakers is making their way down the river when they see something that stops them cold. Standing on the riverbank is a girl, maybe 17 years old. She's screaming, waving her arms frantically. When they paddle closer, they can see she's in bad shape, absolutely terrible shape. Her clothes are torn, her face is scratched and bruised. She looks like she's been through hell. They pull their kayaks to shore and run to her. She's barely coherent, keeps repeating the same thing over and over. They're all dead. Everyone's dead. Now, before we talk about what happened to this girl, we need to go back to where this story really begins. Because what I'm about to tell you is one of the strangest and most terrifying cases in modern hiking history. A case so bizarre that 30 years later, nobody can agree on what actually killed 6 people in the mountains. Before we get into it, if you like stories about real mysteries that blur the line between reality and nightmare, then you're in the right place. That's what we do here, new cases every week. If that interests you, please subscribe and turn on all notifications. All right, let's get into today's story. 1992, northern Kazakhstan, a technical college. This is where our survivor, 17-year-old Valentina Utochenko, is studying. But she's not just there for her main profession. She's also training to become a school tourism instructor with the right to lead groups up to 3rd category difficulty. And in those days, tourism wasn't just a hobby. It was huge. People would gather in clubs, meet new friends, form groups, and then head out into the mountains together. Valentina loved it. She'd been on multiple trips before this one, seen fields of wild tulips stretching across mountain valleys, walked alongside rushing mountain rivers, climbed over massive boulders on high mountain passes. It was a completely different life from what she knew in Kazakhstan. The camaraderie, the mutual support, the sense of adventure. And she was never scared. Not once. Summer of 1993. The hiking club at Valentina's school is planning another expedition. The destination? The Khamar Daban mountain range in southern Siberia, near Lake Baikal. Beautiful territory. Challenging, but nothing this group couldn't handle. The leader would be Lyudmila Korovina, 41 years old, master hiker. Now, Lyudmila was something else. She was strong-willed, confident, the kind of woman who commanded respect the moment she walked into a room. She was beautiful, too. Extravagant, people said. But what really set her apart was her experience. She'd done this exact route before, multiple times, even in winter. She knew these mountains like the back of her hand. During the regular school year, she taught drawing and drafting. But hiking? That was her real passion, her hobby, the thing that made her come alive. And everyone who knew her said the same thing. She was thorough, careful. She explained everything clearly to her groups, made sure everyone understood the plan. She was kind, she was good, and she was experienced. When Lyudmila announced the Khamar Daban trip, most of the club members passed. Different reasons, other plans. But Valentina? She didn't hesitate. She said yes right away. The final group came together. 7 people total. Lyudmila Korovina, the leader, 41 years old. Alexander Krysin, 23 years old. Everyone called him Sasha. Lyudmila had a special connection with him, treated him almost like a son. Tatiana Filipenko, 24. Denis Shvachkin, 19. Valentina Utochenko, our survivor, 17 years old. Victoria Zalesova, 16. And Timur Bapanov, the youngest, just 15 years old. They were a good group, mixed ages, but all experienced enough for what lay ahead. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. August 1st, 1993. The group sets out. The weather forecast is good, clear skies, reasonable temperatures for that time of year. Everything looks perfect. And for the first few days, it is perfect. They're hiking through some of Russia's most beautiful terrain. Dense forests give way to open mountain meadows, rivers cutting through valleys. The air is clean, cold, and fresh. They're moving at a good pace, setting up camp each evening, sharing meals, telling stories around a fire. This is what they came for, this feeling, this sense of being completely alive in the wilderness with people you trust. August 4th, the group reaches their planned campsite for the evening, a place called Peak Retranslator. It gets its name from a communications relay tower sitting on top of the mountain. Now, this tower had been built years earlier when this area was more developed. There was even a small building at the base, a generator house. Empty now, but it was there. The group sets up their tents a few hundred meters away from this structure, and that's when the weather starts to change. It starts with clouds rolling in. Then the temperature drops. Then the wind picks up. By evening, it's raining. Not heavy yet, but steady. The kind of rain that soaks through everything if you're not careful. Now, here's where things get interesting. That relay building, the one just a few hundred meters away, it would have been a perfect shelter. There were even beds inside, a proper roof, walls to block the wind. But the group doesn't use it. Why not? Some people think it's because in 1993, right after the Soviet Union collapsed, there was fear about entering government property, trespassing, getting in trouble. Others think it's simpler than that. Lyudmila was confident. She'd been through worse weather than this. She probably figured they could ride it out. Or maybe, in the rain and the fog, they simply didn't know the building was there, couldn't see it through the storm. Whatever the reason, they stay in their tents. And overnight, the weather gets worse, much worse. A freak cyclonic storm rolls in. The temperature plummets. The rain gets heavier. The wind starts ripping at the tent stakes. Valentina would later describe it like this: the storm was literally tearing the tent down, pulling out the stakes, ripping at the fabric. By early morning on August 5th, they knew they couldn't stay where they were. The visibility is terrible. Thick fog everywhere. You can barely see a few meters in front of you. The wind is howling. The cold is biting through their wet clothes. Lyudmila makes the call. "We're going down. Everyone, pack up. We're heading for the tree line." The tree line is about 4 kilometers away, down the ridge. If they can reach the forest, they'll have natural shelter from the wind. Trees to block the worst of it. A place to regroup and figure out their next move. It's the right decision. The only decision, really. So they pack up in the storm. Everything is soaking wet. The fog is so thick you can barely see the person in front of you. The wind is relentless. They form a line and start making their way down the ridge toward the trees. Valentina remembers the fog, how disorienting it was, how the only thing guiding them was the sense of going downward. Down had to lead somewhere safer. The wind was so strong it felt like it might blow them off the mountain. But they're pushing through, moving as a group, following Lyudmila's lead. They're cold, they're wet, they're tired, but they're managing. And then, without warning, everything falls apart. Because what happens next doesn't make any sense. It's early morning, maybe 5 a.m. They're still high on the ridge, but making progress toward the tree line. The storm is still raging, fog everywhere, freezing rain mixed with snow, and suddenly someone screams. It's Sasha, 23-year-old Alexander Krissin, the one Lyudmila treated like a son. He's in the middle of the line. One moment he's walking, the next moment he's screaming, not like he's hurt, not like he's fallen. This is different. This is the sound of pure terror. The group stops, turns to look at him, and what they see doesn't make any sense. Sasha has collapsed. His hands are at his throat. His mouth is opening and closing, but the sounds coming out are horrifying, gurgling, choking, and then white foam starts coming from his mouth. Foam pouring out, mixing with the rain on his face, then blood from his ears, not a little, streaming, running down the sides of his face. The group stands there frozen. Nobody knows what to do. They've never seen anything like this. Lyudmila snaps into action. She's the leader, so she runs to him, drops to her knees beside him, trying to help, trying to figure out what's wrong. But there's nothing she can do. Within minutes, he's gone. Lyudmila looks up at the others. She's in shock, but trying to stay calm. She tells them to take the packs and head down to the tree line. Get to safety. She'll stay with Sasha. It's what a good leader does. Protect the group. Deal with the emergency. So the others start moving. Dennis, Tatiana, Victoria, Timur, and Valentina. They're moving faster now, scared, confused. The tree line is still a few kilometers away, but they're pushing hard. But then it starts happening to the others, one by one. Valentina sees it. She's 17 years old, and she's watching her friends lose their minds right in front of her. Some of them have blood, some have foam. Many of them have dilated pupils, wide, like they're seeing something that isn't there. She's calling their names, screaming at them, but they don't respond. They don't even look at her. It's like they can't hear her at all. Victoria runs behind a rock, hiding, crouching, her eyes wide with terror. Tatiana does something even worse. She starts bashing her head against a rock over and over, using all her strength. The sound is sickening. Valentina is yelling at her to stop, but Tatiana doesn't hear. She's completely gone, lost in whatever nightmare is playing out in her mind. And then Victoria, she comes at Valentina, runs up and bites her, actually bites her like an animal. This isn't hypothermia. This isn't panic. This is madness, complete insanity. Valentina doesn't know what to do. She's surrounded by people she knows, people she trusts, and they're all either dying or attacking or hurting themselves. Dennis is still somewhat coherent. He sees what's happening, sees Valentina standing there in shock, and he yells at her, "Valia, don't stand there! Run!" That's what saves her. Dennis, 19 years old, in the middle of this nightmare. He tells her to run. So she does. She turns and runs down the slope, away from the bodies, away from the screaming, away from whatever invisible thing is killing them all. Behind her, she can hear it continuing. The sounds, the chaos, people falling, collapsing. The cold was brutal. The wind was strong enough to knock you over. Many of them were stumbling, falling. The slope was steep, and the weather was fighting them every step. But that doesn't explain the foam, the blood, the biting, the head bashing. Something else was happening on that mountain. Valentina slides down into a ravine. There are some trees, not many, but enough for shelter. She's terrified. She doesn't know if whatever killed them is going to kill her too. If she's going to start bleeding, start foaming at the mouth, start seeing things that aren't there. She finds a plastic tarp, one of the ones they'd brought. She presses herself against a tree, wraps it around herself, and just sits there. How long? She doesn't know. Time stops meaning anything when you're in shock. All she can think about is what she just saw. Her friends, her teacher, all of them going insane and dying within minutes. 6 people in less than half an hour, all showing the same bizarre symptoms. And Valentina? Nothing. She feels the cold. She feels the fear. But no foam, no blood, no madness. Why her? Why did she survive when everyone else died? She doesn't have an answer. Years later, she still doesn't have an answer. Eventually, the cold wakes her from her shock. She's shivering violently. She realizes she needs to move, needs supplies, needs to figure out how to survive. So she climbs back up, back to where the bodies are. The ravine wasn't deep, just a small drop, enough to put some distance between her and the horror. When she reaches the site, they're all dead, all 6 of them. Lyudmila is still sitting next to Sasha, right where they'd left her. She never moved. She stayed with him until the end, and then she died there too. Valentina takes a compass and a map from the bodies. Her hands are shaking. She can barely look at them. She says goodbye to her friends, to her teacher, to the people who were laughing and hiking with her just hours ago. And then she turns and walks away. Now comes the hardest part. 4 days alone in the Siberian wilderness. No group, no leader, no clear way out. But she has something the others didn't. She has a reason to live. My goal was to survive and come back to Mama. That's what kept her going. Her mother. When you're 17 and everyone around you has just died, you hold on to whatever you can. For Valentina, it was the thought of seeing her mother again. She looks around, tries to get her bearings. The fog is so thick that she can barely see. The terrain is steep and dangerous. She's wet, she's cold, she's running on adrenaline and fear. But then she sees something. Power line poles, old electrical poles, no wires on them anymore, just the wooden posts, standing in a line, marching down the mountain. And she thinks, power lines go somewhere. They lead to civilization, to people, to safety. So she follows them. Valentina can't remember much about those 4 days. She says it's all like a fog, a dream. She remembers walking She remembers following the poles, but the details, gone. She doesn't know if she stopped, if she rested, how long she walked each day. All she remembers is putting one foot in front of the other, following those poles down the mountain. 4 days, alone, in the Siberian wilderness. When you're 17 and you want to live, your body does things you didn't know it could do. Your legs carry you forward even when you think you can't take another step. Your mind shuts down the parts that would make you panic, that would make you give up. You just keep moving. At some point, she finds an old hunter's hut, unfinished, abandoned, but it has walls, a roof. She spends one night there, gets out of the wind, rests, then keeps going. She reaches a river, the Snezhnaya River, fast-moving, cold, beautiful, and she knows rivers mean people, rivers mean towns, rivers mean rescue. She follows the river downstream, August 9th, 1993. 4 days after the incident, a group of kayakers is paddling down the Snezhnaya River, just out enjoying the water, the scenery, and then they see her, a girl, standing on the riverbank, waving her arms frantically, screaming. They paddle to shore, run to her. She's in terrible shape. Her clothes are torn. Her face is scratched and bruised. Her hands and feet are frostbitten. But she's alive. They get her warm, get her fed, get her to safety, and slowly, bit by bit, she tells them what happened. The kayakers contact the authorities immediately. A search and rescue team is organized. But here's the thing. It takes them weeks to find the bodies. Weeks. The weather is bad. The location is remote. The terrain is dangerous. And when they finally reach the site, what they find raises more questions than answers. The bodies are scattered across the ridge, some partially clothed, some fully clothed, all showing signs of the same bizarre symptoms Valentina described. The autopsies are performed, and the official cause of death? Hypothermia and protein deficiency. But that's just 2 words on a piece of paper. It doesn't tell us what really happened on that mountain. It doesn't explain the foam, the blood from the ears, the madness, the speed. It doesn't explain why Valentina survived when everyone else died. So what really happened up there? Years after the tragedy, a medical expert reviewed the case, looked at the autopsy reports, studied Valentina's testimony, examined the conditions on that mountain, and he came up with a theory. Not a simple theory, not an easy theory, but one that might explain at least some of what happened. Let's start with Sasha, the first to die. The doctor thinks Sasha didn't die from hypothermia, not directly anyway. Remember, they'd been hiking for days in brutal conditions, cold, wet, exhausted, dehydrated. When you're dehydrated and pushing your body hard in extreme cold, your blood thickens, gets more viscous. Thick blood can form clots, and those clots can break loose, travel through your bloodstream. The doctor's theory? Sasha had a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that traveled to his lungs. That would explain the foam from his mouth, pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs. It would explain why he died so suddenly, so violently. One moment, he's walking. The next moment, he can't breathe. He's drowning in his own fluids. And everyone sees it happen. Now think about what the rest of the group is experiencing in that moment. They're exhausted. They're freezing. They've been in a storm all night. They're wet. They're scared. And suddenly, right in front of them, one of their own starts dying, foam pouring from his mouth, making horrible sounds. Lyudmila, their leader, runs to help him, but there's nothing she can do. Within minutes, Sasha is dead. She tells the others to go down to the tree line to get to safety. She'll stay with Sasha, but then she doesn't move. She sits there with his body, in shock, frozen, not from the cold, but from the horror of what just happened. The doctor thinks Lyudmila experienced psychological paralysis. She was an experienced hiker, but she'd never lost anyone before, never watched someone die like that. Her mind couldn't process it, so she just shut down. The rest of the group sees this. They see Lyudmila sitting there, not moving, not coming to help them, and they panic. Not normal panic, extreme panic, the kind that makes people do irrational things. The doctor says that in states of extreme terror, different people react in different ways. Some freeze, some become hyper-focused, some completely lose control, some hurt themselves, bash their heads, bite others, tear at their clothes. This is what the doctor thinks happened. A cascade of panic triggered by watching Sasha die, amplified by the cold, the exhaustion, the isolation, the fact that their leader had stopped responding. One by one, they succumbed, some to panic, some to hypothermia while in that panic state, some to both. They died within half an hour, all of them, except Valentina. Why did Valentina survive? The doctor says she was the only one who kept a clear mind, the only one who followed Lyudmila's instructions. Go down. Find shelter. She ran. She found the ravine. She wrapped herself in the tarp. She waited. When she climbed back up and saw everyone dead, she didn't panic. She took the compass, the map. She looked for a way out. She saw the power lines and followed them. For 4 days she walked. She doesn't remember those days. The doctor calls it stress-induced amnesia. Her brain shut down everything except survival. No memory, no emotion, just move forward. It's a compelling theory. It explains a lot. The sudden death of Sasha, the panic, the bizarre behaviors, why Lyudmila never moved, why Valentina survived. But here's the thing, even with this explanation, there are still questions. Blood from the ears. That's not typical of panic or hypothermia. The speed, 30 minutes for 6 people to die, even in extreme cold. That's remarkably fast. The dilated pupils, multiple victims showing the same symptom. Why was Valentina the only one who kept her mind clear? Why didn't at least one other person follow Lyudmila's order and survive? And there's something else, something the doctor's theory doesn't fully address. The simultaneousness of it all, the way they all seem to lose their minds at roughly the same time. One person panicking, that makes sense. 2 people? Okay. But 5 people all exhibiting extreme irrational behavior within minutes of each other? That's unusual, even for a panic cascade. Look, the doctor's theory makes sense. Panic, hypothermia, a tragic series of events triggered by watching someone die suddenly in a storm. But 30 years later, this case still raises questions. Questions that don't have easy answers. questions that maybe don't have answers at all. The Khamar Daban incident remains one of the strangest hiking tragedies in history. 6 experienced hikers, dead within half an hour, showing symptoms that even experts struggle to fully explain, and one 17-year-old girl who somehow kept her mind clear enough to survive. What do you think happened on that mountain? Was it panic and hypothermia, like the doctor suggests? Was it something else? Something we don't understand? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, please subscribe. We cover cases like this every week. Real mysteries, real tragedies, told with respect and research. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there.